At UMC, access to your healthcare is only a call away. Dial 74-NURSE for free, instant medical advice from experienced and trusted UMC nurses, 24 hours a day. Learn more at umchealthsystem.com.
And welcome in, everyone, to RedRaiders.com. I am Zach Long, that is Don Williams, and that means it is time for Don versus Twitter after a week off, as we took a little break there, getting ready for the big Thanksgiving battle here between Texas Tech and Texas. A lot of good questions this week, Don, and I can guarantee you they're a little cranky. They got a little feisty this week. There's a good, diverse mix here, and Don's going to have fun, folks.
It is. A lot of good questions on a variety of topics, and so we will get to them.
Let's attack them as you wish. We'll start first with Albert Flores at AJ Don Williams. Isn't this the time to give in to giving Michael Brewer significant playing time and see what he gives you in a real game? Less turnovers? Your thoughts?
Possibly, if you get a quarterback who could give you a no turnover game, I think Cliff Kingsbury would go for that. It's been I think a difficult process for Michael Brewer to get enough time to catch up to the other two, and Cliff Kingsbury obviously has been reluctant to put him into a game situation so far. I think, though, with the week off, that probably gave Michael Brewer a little better opportunity to get into the mix, and so you might be able to see him on Thursday against the Longhorns. It appeared, based on some of the circumstances on the sidelines, that Michael probably was the backup, the real-time backup in the game against Baylor last week, even though he wound up not getting in.
Cliff does not want to get buried in Austin, and if he has to make a move, I don't doubt for 1 second that he'll make that move. Don Robert Powell, the question now at AJ Don Williams. In order to beat UT, we need Tech to get ahead, make UT throw. If UT throws over 25 passes, Tech wins. Your thoughts on Robert's prediction there?
Robert's nailed it, I think. I don't know about the magic number being 25, but definitely it's a for sure thing that Tech needs to force UT to throw the football, because Case McCoy, the last 5 games, has thrown 9 interceptions and only 5 touchdown passes, and for his career, you're talking about a guy who is over 300 yards passing only a couple of times. So it's not that's not the Longhorns' strength. And yeah, if you can bottle up the run and force them into some 3rd and 8, 2nd and 9 kind of situations, then that probably is going to be Tech's best opportunity.
All right, Don, on to a couple more questions. These are getting a little bit more feisty here. Robert Powell with another question. In 08, Tech is where Baylor and Oklahoma State are now. How can we get both of them to fire their coaches over stupidity?
I don't think you can get them to fire the coaches over stupidity. I think your best option is for somebody to hire away one of those 2 coaches. Much speculation that Art Briles would be that guy to leave Baylor, but the Bears just signed him to that new 10-year contract, and you got to believe that there is a hefty buyout involved.
Oh,
still,
absolutely.
Still speculation that Texas, if Mack Brown steps down at the end of this year, or whenever Mack Brown does step down, that the Longhorns have all the money in the world and they can afford whatever buyout that they want to pay, and that they could still get Art Briles to leave Waco, which I think is conceivable. That would, I think, be your best bet to get Art Briles out of Waco. Right. Oklahoma State, I think it's going to take. It would probably take a really down cycle and several bad years in a row to uproot Mike Gundy from that program, because you're talking to a guy who's a former Oklahoma State quarterback. He is at OSU what Cliff Kingsbury is at Texas Tech. So I don't see the end of his tenure anytime soon. And I think it's a very apt comparison, because the 2 things that those 2 programs both have going for them right now is continuity. They've had their system in place for a lot of years. This is Mike Gundy's 9th season as head coach at Oklahoma State. Art Briles is close to that at Baylor, 6 or 7 years now. And so everybody, all the kids who are playing for them have been running Baylor system, Oklahoma State system from the day they walked in the door. That's a big advantage that Texas Tech has not had the last few years.
And I just don't see a big-time job opening up that could lure Mike Gundy away from Oklahoma State. Even though he has flirted with other places the last couple of years, I just don't see that big boy job coming up that could pull Mike out of Stillwater.
Plus, with all the financial resources and money, he has great facilities and can pretty much get whatever he wants there.
Up next, a subject we hit on earlier today on the UMC Health System AJ Media pregame show from Brad A. here at AJ Don Williams. Why should Texas get to play a home game every Thanksgiving? Would the Big 12 be okay with, say, Iowa State demanding the same thing?
You know, simple answer to the first question, why should Texas get to play at home every Thanksgiving? Because they want to. They asked for it, and they're the only one that asked for it. Would the Big 12 be okay with Iowa State demanding the same? Maybe, if ISU wanted to. You know, but here's the thing about it. There's this perception that this is something the Big 12 is doing to appease Texas, when the reality is this is something that Texas wants to do, and the other programs don't want to play at home on Thanksgiving. Texas Tech's Kirby Hocutt asked the Big 12 for Texas Tech to be able to play that Thanksgiving weekend in Dallas at Cowboys Stadium against Baylor next year. He would not sign off on the 2-year extension to the Baylor series until he got the word from the Big 12 that game would be on Thanksgiving weekend. And then he said, okay, we'll go play it at AT&T Stadium, because the thing about it is Texas Tech on Thanksgiving weekend, you have a lot of students gone.
Right.
And so I think there is a fear from Texas Tech's standpoint that you won't get the crowd that you won't get the crowd that you would normally expect. So Tech doesn't really crave or want to play a home game on Thanksgiving night, because not sure what crowd size you're going to get. So it's not really the case that the Big 12 is appeasing Texas. It's just Texas is the only program in the Big 12 who stepped up and said, we want to do this and play on Thanksgiving night and be at home. Other programs aren't that confident in their home crowd support on a holiday night.
Next up here, Don, a question from Jay Langley that I'm sure is going to go over real well. At AJ Don Williams, shouldn't Cliff worry less about new uniform styles and more about the fact that his defense can't tackle anyone? Ow.
As an old school guy, I would agree with you, Jay, and say yes, he should worry more about his defense and the run defense in particular than new uniform styles. With that said, a lot of coaches nationally seem to be worried about uniform styles now, and apparel manufacturers are kind of like the tail wagging the dog these days in college football, where if you're not one of the traditional powers like Alabama or Texas, I know you maybe, then pretty much the apparel manufacturers are saying, look at all our cool stuff and look at all the different colors and designs that we can give your program. And the reason why coaches are amenable to those approaches is they feel like it helps them in recruiting, to be able to show the 18-year-old kids these half dozen different uniform combinations, different jerseys, different helmets, so on and so forth. I mean, look at Texas A&M. Aggies have Johnny Manziel, defending Heisman Trophy winner, and they're trotting out wearing their gray, which is not a Texas A&M school color either.
But they like it either way.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I agree that they should worry more about what's actually happening on the field than what they're wearing. But Cliff Kingsbury is really not in the minority. He's pretty much in the majority among college coaches these days who put a big emphasis on what their teams look like.
And not that it's my job to defend Texas Tech. They're worried about the tackling, too. In fact, this week, Matt Wallerstadt telling us they went back to old-school four-station tackling, going to different drills, different emphasis this week. So they're working their butt off to try to – they don't want to be embarrassed. They're sick of the yards after contact. They are trying to remedy that problem. It's not all about flash and glamour.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury knows the areas that have to be shored up on this team, but he carves out an extra hour or two in his work week to communicate with Under Armour.
Right. Troy Simmons with a question here for you, Don. Do you feel one of the three quarterbacks will establish themselves in the offseason? Will it be a quarterback by committee next year, or is someone going to isolate out here?
You know, I said early this season that I thought we would be sitting here next October talking about, will it be Baker Mayfield this week? Will it be Davis Webb? Will it be Michael Brewer? From what I've seen, I still think that we'll see some more of this next year. I don't think it is a job that one of these guys will nail down in 15 days of spring practice. And even if they do, Cliff Kingsbury's not going to let them think that. I would say with about 99% confidence that at the end of spring next April, Cliff Kingsbury will not name a starting quarterback and will say that he will let them battle it out in the summer and in the first couple of weeks of camp. And here's the bottom line. Unless one of these guys shows the ability to drastically cut the turnover rate, Texas Tech has committed 28 turnovers this year. There's 4 schools in the nation with fewer turnovers by their offense than Texas Tech has. Then this situation is going to stay close to the same because you haven't seen a whole lot of separation. One guy will play a couple of good games, and then he will have a bad game. You throw the other guy in there, he'll look okay for a couple of weeks, then he will mess things up, and he'd go back to another guy. Of course, the whole wild card in this scenario is Michael Brewer. Once this season is done, he has a full several months to rest the back and get 100%, completely 100% healthy. Where does he factor in? I mean, a lot of folks have assumed that Michael is the best quarterback among these 3, but I think it's pretty evident from Cliff Kingsbury's standpoint, the way that he's handled them, that Cliff doesn't necessarily think that.
Up next for you, Don, a question from Bear Mills at AJ Don Williams. Jace, of course referring to Jace Amaro, what's the future for him? Texas Tech University for a senior year, or does he make the jump to the NFL?
I think it's 50-50, quite frankly. Jace Amaro's been pretty consistent in saying, I don't think anyone doubts or denies how much he loves this program. I mean, he was a very easy guy for Texas Tech to recruit because his dad had played here. And I mean, he absolutely loved the school, dreamed of being a Red Raider. And you see a lot of passion in the way he plays, a lot of fire, and he really wants to do well for Texas Tech. And I think it's easy for him to sit here now while the season is still going on and say he doesn't want this to end. He told me a couple of weeks ago that he's not sure he's ready to not just be a regular kid, but at the same time, once this season's over and you start looking at the draft projections, and he could be a first-round draft pick, could be a second-round draft pick, the kind of money that he will have the opportunity to make will be very enticing. I would go back, though, to something I said very early in the season, and that is, from my knowledge, I don't think it's a situation where Jace really needs the money. He's a little different from a lot of guys who enter the NFL draft early. Good family background. I don't think I don't think he feels like he desperately needs to get NFL riches as soon as possible to help his family. That's not his situation. So he could come back for a year. But he could also be taking some risk. I mean, think about just in the last month, we've seen him flipped on his head, landed on the shoulder and neck. And then
absolutely.
Last week against Baylor, saw him get popped right there in the chin, gashed his chin, gashed his cheek, was down for several minutes, and so he will be the same kind of target next year. So right now, I think it's a flip a coin. I don't really know which way this thing's going to go.
Last question here for you, Don, at AJ Don Williams. Texas Tech has a ton of 3-star recruits for 2014, but no 4-star recruits. Will we get any 4-star recruits? So let's go ahead and set Don Williams off on his tirade about star systems and recruiting.
I'm not a big fan of the star system, but with that said, obviously, one thing that clearly this team needs is to upgrade the talent on defense. I think really across the board, on defense, the offensive line, multiple different areas. I think Texas Tech's in on about 3 guys who are the 4-star recruits. I think the good thing about it is the guys that they are in on who are the 4-star recruits, the highest rated prospects are linemen. You're talking about an offensive tackle named Fawn Cooper from College of DuPage in Illinois. He's rated number 7 offensive lineman in the country among junior colleges, number 26 JC recruit overall by 247.com. Then there's a couple of big defensive tackles that Texas Tech would love to have. Terrell Clinkscales, 6'4", 300 pounds from Dodge City, Kansas Community College. He's ranked top 10 overall among JUCO players in the nation and the number 2 defensive tackle recruit. Tech is battling against Nebraska for him. Landon Wright, a recruiting analyst who works with Recom247.com, says he thinks that Clinkscale may be kind of a Nebraska lean right now. Now, another guy from the Texas high school ranks, Coven Henderson from Longview, about 6'1", 6'2", 280 to 90 pounds, top 40 prospect in Texas, and we're talking about top 40 defensive tackle recruit in the state. There's a ton of people in on this guy. So honestly, I think Tech will do well if they get one of the three. That would be kind of my guess right now.
Last thing I want to do before we go off there is there's always a running request Tech's bowl scenario. We've discussed that on a couple of the shows, but real quick, where do you think they're headed, Don?
We said earlier holiday or a second consecutive trip to Houston for the Texas Bowl. If you get two teams in the BCS, Tech probably would go Holiday Bowl to San Diego. If the Big 12 only gets one team in the BCS, then Tech probably will be back in the Texas Bowl in Houston. As it stands now, I think it'll be one Big 12 team in the BCS. Tech then will be the number 6 slotted team unless they upset Texas. And if they stay the number 6 slotted team, then I would project Tech in Houston to play a team from the Big 10, and I'll say Michigan, the Wolverines, who look like they're going to finish 7-5.
Could be a heck of a matchup against a perennial power and tradition in college football in the Michigan Wolverines.
That'll be a neat game to watch, even if Michigan's on a down year.
Exactly. As always, you ask a question to Don Williams, you get a wealth of information back. We want to thank everyone all year for sending in their questions to Don versus Twitter. We'll have a couple more episodes, won't we, Don? Once we know where Tech's bowl destination is, and maybe the week leading up to that, we'll make sure we get all of your bowl-related questions and maybe even spring football-related questions on Don versus Twitter. But thank you once again for all those questions, and be sure to go over to LubbockOnline.com and RedRaiders.com for full coverage of Texas Tech football. We have our Monday press conference recap. We got our UMC Health System AJ Media pregame show and our topics discussion with Krista Pirtle. For now, though, we're going to bid farewell on the regular season run of Don versus Twitter. I'm Zach Long. That is the man, the myth, the legend, Don Williams, and you are on RedRaiders.com.